You will not believe what happens when Americans find a warning label. They treat it like a personal dare, and I have 49 receipts to prove it. We're talking a man who thought dog shampoo was basically the same as people's shampoo, and came out of the shower with a chemical bald stripe, 5 book club women falling into rose bushes together still holding their wine, and it gets so much dumber from there, like criminally, historically, beautifully dumb. So smash that like button, subscribe so you don't miss a single disaster, and hit that new hype button because every person who ignored a warning label deserves to be famous. Let's go. 1. A grown man spotted the words "Do not use near open flame" on his hairspray can and somehow read it as a barbecue invitation. He grabbed the can at his neighbor's birthday party and used it as a torch to roast marshmallows over the grill. The flame shot back faster than his brain could process the situation. His eyebrows disappeared completely in under 2 seconds, and his neighbor's toupee launched off his head like a startled bird. The birthday crowd went absolutely silent before everyone burst out laughing. 2. An older woman decided that the "Do not use as step stool" label, printed clearly on her toilet tank, was simply a suggestion written by someone with no ambition. She climbed right up to hang new curtains in her bathroom and felt confident until the tank lid shifted beneath her feet. She ended up riding that porcelain lid across the entire bathroom floor like it was a ceramic skateboard at a skate park. The curtains never got hung, and she spent the afternoon explaining the situation to a very confused paramedic. 3. A guy living alone decided that "shake well before use," printed on his protein shake bottle, was an instruction that deserved full commitment. He did not simply shake it over the sink like a normal person. He took it outside and ran a complete lap around his entire apartment building, shaking the bottle above his head the entire way. Neighbors watched from windows without saying a word. He returned breathless and victorious. He then reached up to open the bottle and felt something snap violently in his right shoulder. He drove himself to urgent care, still holding the unopened bottle. The doctor shook it open for him in about 3 seconds. 4. A man thought the "Keep away from children" label on his industrial superglue was more of a guideline than an actual rule. He let his 6-year-old help with a weekend craft project at the kitchen table. Within 4 minutes, the child had successfully bonded both of his own hands to a birdhouse, then to a popsicle stick, then somehow to the family cat who had simply walked through the room minding its own business. The father spent the next 2 hours on the phone with poison control, while the cat sat frozen in place, with a birdhouse attached to its side, looking deeply unimpressed by everything happening around it. 5. A teenager spotted the "Do not point at eyes" warning printed on the side of his brand new laser pointer, and immediately felt personally challenged by it. He pointed it directly at his own eyes within 30 seconds of opening the box just to see what would actually happen. What happened was an immediate and very serious problem. His mother drove him to the emergency room where he sat for 4 full hours under bright lights explaining his decision to a doctor who had clearly heard too much that day. The doctor wrote something in his notes. The teenager never found out what it said, but assumed it was not complimentary. 6. A woman decided that the "Do not use in enclosed spaces" warning on her camping stove did not apply to her specific situation during a power outage. She carried it into her walk-in closet because it was the only room with no drafts. She lit it up and began making tea, surrounded by hanging blouses and winter coats. The fumes filled the small space quickly and quietly. She passed out while trying on a blouse she had not worn since 2019. Her husband found her 40 minutes later, collapsed inside the half-worn blouse on the closet floor, with a perfectly boiled kettle sitting beside her completely untouched. 7. A middle-aged man at a lakeside family gathering saw the "Not a flotation device" label on his giant inflatable pool Flamingo and considered it the most unnecessary warning he had ever read in his life. He carried it to the actual lake and paddled out on it confidently while his family watched from the shore. The Flamingo slowly deflated in the middle of the water, taking him down with it 1 inch at a time. A passing kayaker spotted him and paddled over, trying very hard to keep a straight face. The man was rescued sitting chest deep in water, still holding the Flamingo neck like it had personally betrayed him. 8. A woman at home ran out of her regular face scrub and spotted oven cleaner under the sink. She had read "avoid contact with skin" on the label, but assumed it only applied to people with sensitive skin, and not to someone with what she personally described as a very sturdy face. She applied a small amount and immediately understood that the warning had not been written with skin sensitivity in mind at all. She described the sensation to the urgent care nurse as feeling exactly like the inside of a freshly cleaned oven. The nurse did not find this funny. The woman found it a little funny in hindsight about 3 weeks later. 9. A man hosting a dinner party spotted a decorative wooden ladder leaning against his dining room wall and decided it would make a perfectly adequate extra seat for the evening. The ladder had a small sticker on it that clearly read "Do not sit on," which he peeled off because it was ruining the aesthetic. He sat down mid-toast with a full glass raised. The ladder gave up completely and folded beneath him in one clean motion. He took the tablecloth down with him, then the centerpiece. Then, the entire pot roast, which landed across his chest like a warm and fragrant blanket while his guests stood in complete silence. 10. A man saw the "do not use while driving" instruction on his brand new GPS device and interpreted it as advice directed at less experienced multitaskers than himself. He mounted it directly on his steering wheel for maximum convenience during his morning commute. The GPS gave him a confident instruction. He followed it without questioning. He entered a Dairy Queen drive-thru from completely the wrong direction at a speed that suggested he had never visited a drive-thru before in his life. The staff watched through the window. He ordered a Blizzard. They made it for him anyway because it was 10 in the morning and nobody had the energy to address what had just occurred. 11. A woman with persistent heartburn spotted the "do not exceed 2 tablets" warning on her Antacid bottle and felt that the recommended dose had clearly been written for people with lesser heartburn than hers. She lined up 11 tablets on the kitchen counter and took them one by one with great determination. Her stomach had an immediate and very strong opinion about this decision. She spent the next several hours becoming what her husband later described to his brother as a human carbonation experiment. He called it that because no other description felt accurate enough. The paramedic who arrived used different language entirely, but the general meaning was the same. 12. A man left 6 cans of Aerosol dry shampoo on his car dashboard in August because he had completely ignored the "do not store in direct sunlight" warning printed on every single one of them. He parked in an open lot and went grocery shopping. He returned 40 minutes later to discover that his windshield had exploded outward in a single dramatic event. The parking lot smelled powerfully of artificial coconut for the rest of the afternoon. A woman 3 cars away thought it had rained briefly. A security guard filed a report. The man stood beside his car, holding his groceries, trying to explain the situation to his insurance company over the phone. 13. A young woman had a decorative floating shelf on her living room wall that came with a small but very clear label reading "not load bearing." She decided this referred to actual structural loads and not to her personal vinyl record collection, which she considered culturally important. She stacked every record she owned onto it across one long Saturday afternoon. The shelf held its position until precisely 11:40 at night when the house was completely quiet. Then it performed one single perfect swan dive directly onto her stereo system below. The crash woke her neighbors. She stood in the dark in her pajamas surrounded by 300 records and one destroyed amplifier saying absolutely nothing. 14. A man who was very committed to holistic wellness saw "Do not ingest" printed on his essential oil diffuser drops and decided that if it worked from the outside, it would certainly work better from the inside. He added several drops to his morning tea before work. The taste was immediate and extremely aggressive. He arrived at the emergency room, smelling so powerfully of eucalyptus that staff 2 rooms away could identify him without seeing him. The attending doctor asked him to explain his reasoning. He explained his reasoning. The doctor wrote it down without making eye contact. He was discharged with a pamphlet and an expression on his face he had never made before. 15. A woman borrowed her son's pink electric scooter that had a sticker on the handlebar clearly reading, "Not for street use," and decided to ride it 3 miles to her office because her car was in the shop. It ran beautifully for about 1.5 miles. Then the motor made a sound that no motor should ever make and died completely in the center of a busy road. She pushed it the remaining distance in her work suit. Every traffic light caught her, every single one. She arrived at the office 12 minutes late pushing a Barbie pink scooter with a cartoon princess on the footboard while her colleagues watched silently from the lobby windows. 16. A woman completely ignored the maximum capacity 200 pounds tag sewn into her hanging porch swing and invited her sister and their golden retriever to sit on it with her after Sunday lunch. All 3 settled in comfortably. The swing held for about 4 seconds before the hooks released from the ceiling simultaneously with a sound like a starting pistol. All 3 of them rotated through the air in a slow and dignified arc before landing together in the hedges beside the porch. The dog seemed fine immediately and wagged its tail. The 2 women lay in the bushes staring at the sky, having a quiet moment of reflection about decision-making. 17. A woman heard a grinding noise from her garbage disposal and decided to ignore the "Do not attempt to repair yourself" sticker on the unit entirely because she felt she understood appliances intuitively. She unplugged it first, which was good. Then she plugged it back in to hear the noise again, which was not good. Then she stuck her hand inside while it was running because she felt it just needed a nudge in the right direction. It did not need a nudge. She spent 3 full hours in the emergency room that evening, explaining to a nurse with a very calm face that she had simply wanted to help the appliance out and that the appliance had disagreed. 18. A man pulled his favorite silk shirt from the laundry basket and needed it dry within the hour for a dinner reservation. The tag read, "Not safe for dryer" in 3 languages. He read it in 1 language and put the shirt in anyway on the highest heat setting available because he was running late and heat was heat. He returned 8 minutes later to find a perfectly constructed outfit that would have fit a Ken doll with room to spare. He missed the dinner reservation. He gave the shirt to his nephew, who was 7, and delighted. The nephew wore it to school the following Monday and received 3 compliments. 19. A woman bought a full propane tank in October and ignored the "Not for indoor storage" label completely because winter was coming and she wanted it accessible. She stored it in her hall closet behind the coats. A building inspector arrived in November for a routine visit. She opened the closet to grab her jacket and the tank was immediately visible. The inspector stopped mid-sentence. He did not finish the sentence for 11 minutes. By the time he finished, she had received 3 separate forms, a significant fine, and a letter from the HOA that used the word "unacceptable" 4 times in the opening paragraph alone. 20. A young girl at a family dinner party noticed the decorative wax fruit bowl in the center of the table and became absolutely certain the pears were real despite her father telling her twice they were not. The bowl had a small card beside it reading, "Not for human consumption," which she treated as a dare. She picked up a wax pear and bit into it confidently in front of 12 seated family members. She chewed for a full 45 seconds. Nobody spoke. Nobody moved. The table was completely silent except for the sound of wax being worked slowly by human teeth. She placed it back in the bowl quietly and asked if dinner was ready yet. 21. A woman bought a brand new hearing aid and immediately spotted the "Do not submerge in water" warning printed inside the case. She read it carefully and decided it did not apply to shallow tropical water specifically. She wore it snorkeling on her family vacation because she genuinely wanted to hear the fish and felt that was a reasonable thing to want. It short-circuited within 40 seconds of entering the water. She spent the remainder of the holiday communicating entirely through hand signals, which her family found charming for about 1 day and deeply exhausting for the remaining 6. At the family reunion that followed, she nodded enthusiastically at everything anyone said for an entire weekend. 22. A man filled his prescription and read the warning label carefully until he reached "Do not use with alcohol," at which point he folded the paper and put it in the drawer because he had a dinner party that evening, and 2 glasses of wine had never hurt anyone in his personal experience. He had both glasses. He sat down at the table for dessert. He did not make it to dessert. His family found him fully upright in his dining chair, fast asleep, with a fork still raised halfway to his mouth at a precise and dignified angle. When he woke up, everyone was singing happy birthday. It turned out the dinner party had been for him all along. 23. A young woman bought a smartwatch with a fall detection feature and immediately read the disclaimer stating, "This is not a life safety device," which she interpreted as the manufacturer being modest. She threw herself off her living room couch repeatedly to test whether the watch would call for help. She did this 12 times with increasing commitment to the fall. On the 13th attempt, she landed at a slightly wrong angle and felt something in her wrist give way immediately. The watch detected the fall correctly. It called 911 within 4 seconds. The paramedic arrived and asked how it happened. She showed him the bruise on her wrist and the watch on the same arm, which she felt explained everything sufficiently. 24. An uncle saw "Not recommended for home use" printed on a professional grade tile saw at the hardware store and took it as a challenge issued directly to him. He bought it and began retiling his bathroom that same afternoon with great confidence. He cut through 3 tiles successfully, then the subfloor, then a water pipe that nobody had known existed until that exact moment. Water filled the bathroom quickly and enthusiastically. He called a plumber. The plumber arrived and waded in. He found the pipe. He also found a family of mice living beneath the bathtub who had clearly been there for years and were equally surprised by the afternoon's developments as everyone else present. 25. A young woman opened her hair dye kit on a Saturday morning and read the instruction that said "Always wear gloves," then looked at the thin plastic gloves provided and decided her hands were already a lost cause aesthetically and skipped them entirely. She applied jet black dye with her bare hands, working quickly and confidently. Her palms stained a deep and permanent black that did not fade for 2 full weeks, regardless of what she scrubbed them with. She returned to work Monday morning and said nothing about it. By Wednesday, 3 separate coworkers had quietly asked her about her hand tattoos. She started describing their meaning in detail and committed to the story for the remainder of the month. 26. An old man opened a fresh jar of mayonnaise in early July and noticed the "Keep refrigerated after opening" label printed on the lid. He put the jar on the counter instead because he used mayo frequently and felt the fridge was simply too far away for a condiment he reached for daily. He made sandwiches for his entire office on Friday using that same jar. By noon, the building had been fully evacuated. Emergency services arrived. An investigation was opened. He sat outside on the curb in the afternoon sun, slowly realizing that the fridge had been 4 steps from the counter the entire time, and that this information was now professionally relevant in ways he had not anticipated. 27. A young woman noticed a dark stain on her living room carpet and grabbed a solvent cleaner from under the sink that had "Not for use on carpet" printed clearly on the back label in bold letters. She applied it generously because the stain was stubborn, and she was more stubborn. The solvent dissolved the stain immediately and then kept going. It ate through the carpet, then the underlay, then the first layer of subfloor beneath that. She was left looking at a perfect circular hole through 3 layers of her home. A contractor arrived the following day. While examining the damage, the contractor discovered that the house had been built in the 1960s with asbestos tiles underneath everything, which opened an entirely new and expensive conversation. 28. A man set up his treadmill in the living room and decided that the "Do Not Run in Socks" safety warning on the side panel was written for people with worse balance than his specifically. He set the speed to maximum and stepped on in a pair of thick woolen socks he considered grippy enough for the task. The treadmill had a different assessment of the socks. He launched off the back of the machine with impressive velocity and slid the full length of his hardwood floor directly into the television stand. His wife came in from the kitchen. He was lying on the floor in the socks, looking at the ceiling. He told her he was stretching. 29. An old woman bought a bug zapper for her garden and ignored the "Do Not Use Near Flammable Materials" warning on the box completely because she had a serious mosquito problem and priorities were priorities. She hung it directly above her freshly laid cedar mulch garden bed, which she considered a very convenient location. The zapper did its job efficiently. The mulch had opinions about the proximity. A small fire started quietly and then became less quiet very quickly. The fire department arrived within minutes. She stood on her lawn watching them work and described the whole event to her neighbor as a nature experience which her neighbor did not feel was the right framing, but said nothing at the time. 30. A young girl unwrapped a home science kit on a Saturday afternoon and found a pair of safety goggles inside along with a printed instruction card that said, "Wear protective eyewear at all times during experiments," in large friendly letters. She put the goggles on the table because she felt her eyes were fine, and the experiment looked simple enough. The experiment was not simple enough. Something reacted faster than she expected, and something else went directly where the goggles would have been. She sat in urgent care that afternoon explaining to a doctor that she had been pretty sure her eyes could handle it. The doctor asked what had made her sure. She thought about it for a while and said instinct. 31. An old woman purchased an industrial hand dryer at an auction because it was cheap, and she needed something powerful enough to dry her thick hair quickly every morning. The label on the unit clearly read, "Not for personal use," which she felt was a liability disclaimer and nothing more. She mounted it in her bathroom and used it on full power the following morning. The force was significant. Her hair dried in under 90 seconds and fused into a single solid aerodynamic unit pointing directly backward from her head. She could not turn her neck in either direction for 2 full days. She attended her book club that evening, and everyone pretended not to notice, which was somehow worse. 32. A man spotted the "Do Not Take on Empty Stomach" warning on his new vitamin bottle on a Monday morning and decided that taking more vitamins faster was simply a better approach to health than the label suggested. He lined up 7 capsules beside his coffee mug before breakfast and swallowed them all with one determined gulp. His stomach introduced itself to him in ways it never had before within 20 minutes. He spent the remainder of the morning on his bathroom floor, making slow and painful acquaintance with each individual tile. He identified a crack in the grout near the toilet that he had never noticed before and made a mental note to fix it once he was able to stand again. 33. A young woman bought a full can of paint for her bedroom walls and tossed it sideways into her car trunk for the 45-minute drive home from the hardware store, completely ignoring the "Keep Upright" instruction printed on the lid in orange letters. She drove home feeling productive She opened the trunk upon arrival, and the can had rolled the entire journey without stopping once. She lifted it out, and a thin line of paint followed her across the driveway. She opened it inside. She described the interior of her car to her roommate that evening as looking like a Picasso painting, which her roommate agreed was accurate and also deeply upsetting. 34. A grandmother decided her kitchen floor needed a deep clean and rented a gas-powered pressure washer from a hardware store despite the label stating not intended for indoor use in letters large enough to read from across the room. She dragged it inside anyway because the floor was genuinely terrible and she had committed to the task. She turned it on at full pressure. Every single cabinet door in the kitchen blew open at the same moment with a sound like a starting gun. The refrigerator contents crossed 3 rooms in under 2 seconds. She stood in the kitchen completely soaked, holding the wand, watching a head of lettuce travel slowly down the hallway toward the front door. 35. A teenage boy at a family pool party grabbed a foam pool noodle that had a small tag attached reading, "Not to be used as a weapon," and immediately located his uncle across the yard. He initiated combat. His uncle was not prepared. The nephew swung with considerable enthusiasm on the 3rd strike, lost his grip entirely, and released the noodle at full velocity across the patio. It took out a full tray of drinks first, then a citronella candle that had been burning peacefully for 2 hours. Then his grandmother's sun hat directly off her head while she was mid-sentence speaking to a neighbor. She finished her sentence without acknowledging it, which everyone agreed was impressive. 36. A young woman spotted the "not suitable for children under 3" label on a balloon pump at a family gathering and handed it directly to her baby cousin, who was 1.5, because he seemed interested in it and she was busy. Nobody checked on him for the next hour. When someone finally looked over, he had inflated 47 balloons, which were now covering the entire living room floor ceiling to carpet. He was sitting in the center of them completely calm and surrounded by color like a tiny king surveying his territory. The adults stood at the doorway trying to understand what they were looking at for a long moment before anyone said anything. 37. An old man in his kitchen was using his electric label maker beside the sink to organize his pantry shelves on a quiet Sunday afternoon. The device had a warning sticker on the bottom that read, "Do not use near water," in small but perfectly legible print. He noticed it and moved the label maker approximately 4 inches further from the sink, which he felt was a reasonable compromise. A small amount of water from the tap reached it anyway. The machine shorted out immediately with a brief and definitive sound. It printed one final label before shutting down permanently. The label said only the word "wet" in bold capital letters, which he peeled off and stuck to the front of the machine as a memorial. 38. A father making smoothies for his family on a Sunday morning filled the blender completely to the very top, ignoring the "do not overfill" line marked clearly on the side of the jug. He placed the lid on loosely because he felt the mixture needed ventilation to blend properly, which is not how blenders work. He pressed the button on high. The lid left the blender before the sound even registered. Green smoothie traveled upward with tremendous force and redecorated the entire kitchen ceiling in a single event. His daughter walked in from the hallway. She looked at the ceiling. She looked at her father. She walked back out without saying a single word and told her mother what had happened. 39. A young woman hosting a Christmas party spent an entire afternoon decorating her gingerbread house with holiday decoration spray that had "not edible" printed on every side of the can in festive red lettering. She used it anyway because it gave the house a magnificent professional shine that she was very proud of. She set it on the dessert table without mentioning what she had used. 3 guests got through an entire wall of the house before she realized nobody had been warned. She walked over quietly. She read the can again. She placed it face down on the counter and went to get her phone to search for the poison control number just as a precaution. 40. A mother handed her toddler a staple remover from her home office desk because the child was fussing and it seemed like a harmless distraction. The label on the staple remover clearly read, "Not a toy," which the toddler could not read and the mother had not checked. The child was left alone for 40 minutes while the mother took a work call in the next room. She returned to find the toddler sitting contentedly on the floor, surrounded by a perfect snowfall of tiny metal staples. 3 years of her husband's carefully filed and organized tax documents had been completely and systematically de-stapled. Her husband arrived home at 6. She handed him a glass of wine before he could ask any questions. 41. A man woke up on a Saturday morning to find his prize rose bush had grown significantly overnight and decided to trim it immediately before the neighbors noticed. He grabbed his electric hedge trimmer and headed outside despite the label reading, "Do not use on wet surfaces," because there had been rain that morning and the grass was visibly soaked. He told himself the rose bush did not know that. He stepped onto the wet lawn and slipped within 4 seconds of turning the trimmer on. He did not fall completely. He recovered. However, the trimmer did not recover with him and carved a single perfect mohawk stripe directly down the center of his prize rosebush before he regained control. The rosebush survived. Its dignity did not. 42. A teenage boy picked up a sealed carbonated juice bottle from the refrigerator on a Tuesday afternoon and read the "Do Not Shake" label printed along the bottom edge. He shook it for 30 solid seconds, standing over the kitchen sink because he wanted to understand what would actually happen if someone shook it and felt he was the right person to find out. He pointed it directly at his own face when he opened it. The juice made its feelings known immediately and completely. It covered his hair, his eyebrows, his shirt, and the cabinet behind him in a single pressurized moment. He stood dripping in the kitchen for a few seconds. Then he went upstairs and showered, which he had been planning to do anyway, so he considered it efficient. 43. A young woman needed a Halloween costume for her office party and decided to draw realistic veins on her arm using a whiteboard marker because it was the only pen available, and she was running low on time. The marker packaging clearly stated "not for use on skin," which she read and immediately set aside because the party was in 2 hours. She drew very convincing veins up both forearms and went to work. That evening, she discovered the marker was permanent. She scrubbed for 40 minutes with no result. She returned to work the following Monday with both arms still fully decorated. For the next 3 weeks, she told coworkers it was a medical alert tattoo and answered no follow-up questions whatsoever. 44. An old man needed to change a ceiling light bulb in his home office and decided his wheeled office chair was a perfectly adequate substitute for a stepladder. The chair had a small label under the seat that read, "Do not use as ladder," which he had never read because he had never looked under the seat before. He climbed up carefully and reached for the bulb. The chair rolled. It rolled with surprising speed and commitment across the entire length of the room. He arrived at the opposite wall, still standing upright and still reaching forward. He successfully changed the bulb in the floor lamp on the other side of the room, which had not been his intention but was genuinely impressive regardless. 45. A young man recaulked his entire bathroom on a Sunday evening and felt extremely productive about it. The tube clearly stated, "Allow 24 hours to dry," which he read, and then immediately decided applied to other people's bathrooms and not specifically to his. He used the shower 2 hours later because he had gym plans in the morning and needed to be clean. He slipped on the wet caulk the moment he stepped in. He grabbed the shower curtain instinctively. The curtain rod pulled away from the wall with very little resistance. He landed on the bathroom floor, wrapped completely and snugly inside the shower curtain like a large and moderately injured burrito. He lay there for a moment considering his choices. 46. A woman noticed a stubborn stain on the center cushion of her burgundy living room couch and grabbed a stain remover from the laundry room that was clearly labeled, "Do not use on colored fabrics." In print, she described later as unreasonably small. She applied a small, careful amount directly to the stain. The stain disappeared immediately, so did the burgundy. A perfectly circular beige spotlight appeared in the center of the cushion where the fabric color had simply ceased to exist. She stared at it for a long moment. She went to the bedroom closet and retrieved a throw pillow. She placed it over the circle with precision. She did not mention it to anyone for 2 full years, and the pillow remained there every single day. 47. An old man was reorganizing his kitchen pantry and found several silica gel packets that had come with various packaged goods over the years. Each packet was clearly printed with "Do not eat" in large letters on both sides. He decided they were water treatment pellets and added several to his fish tank because the water had looked slightly cloudy that week, and he felt this was a practical solution. The fish had a difficult night. He stood at the pet store the following morning, trying to explain to a teenage employee what he had added to the tank without actually saying what he had added to the tank. The employee figured it out anyway. The conversation took 11 minutes and ended with a bag of actual water conditioner and a long silence. 48. A teenage girl discovered a bottle of veterinary flea shampoo in the bathroom cabinet that her family used for their dog and read the label, which stated, "Not for human use," clearly across the front. She used it anyway because she had run out of her regular shampoo, and it smelled fine, and she was already in the shower, and the regular shampoo was downstairs. She emerged clean and completely flea-free, which was not a concern she had entered with. She also emerged with a 6-inch stripe of missing hair across the very top of her head, where the formula had reacted with her highlights. She wore a headband to school for 3 weeks and told everyone it was a style choice she was exploring. 49. A woman installed a decorative garden arch in her backyard and thought it looked sturdy enough to support a full porch swing, despite the tag wired to the frame reading "Not load-bearing" in clear black print. She hung the swing from it anyway and invited her entire book club over the following Saturday. All 5 women settled onto the swing with their wine glasses at the same moment. The arch held for approximately 3 seconds, which was longer than it deserved. Then it leaned. Then it committed. All 5 women descended together into the rose bushes below in a single, slow, and unified motion, still holding their glasses upright. 4 of them kept their wine. The 5th one said it was worth it. And there you have it, 49 perfectly healthy adults who looked at a warning label and thought, yeah, that does not apply to me specifically. The warning label was always right. It was always right. If this video made you question every decision you have ever made in your life, then smash that like button, subscribe to BrainFumble, and turn on notifications so you never miss another masterpiece. Share this with someone who needs a reminder that warning labels exist for a reason. Now tell me in the comments which one of these 49 legends are you most related to, and please be honest.